All right, so another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast is on the air. Brandon, your guy Pat McAfee got chewed out by Michael Cole his 2 years at WrestleMania for 1 year wearing jorts, and then the next year, because he didn't want to wear jorts, decided to wear tuxedo shorts. Still got a fight with Michael Cole. Would you like to see Pat McAfee and Michael Cole inside the squared circle?
Absolutely not, because Michael Cole would get absolutely destroyed. He would get a boot right to the chest. Game over, one shot, done deal. Pat McAfee is 11.
I feel like Pat McAfee's getting a little singled out here because if Rob Gronkowski would have wore the same outfit, or pretty much any outfit he wanted, well, he's Rob Gronkowski, he would have got away with it. Hence what we saw him wearing at WrestleMania. Not
sure.
Emmy award-winning show host attire, as you say.
Yeah, right.
The Heel to the Face podcast, and it starts right now.
So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys at Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad election would be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast is on the air, and since we last joined you, so much has happened. We had multiple pay-per-views. We got another pay-per-view coming up, AEW, NXT, a lot to get to. I'm K-Rock Jared, that's who we found me on social media. Brandon is at Icebreaker21, and the show is at Heel to the Face on Twitter. So let's get right to it. We'll start off with the beginning of the week. We'll start Friday Night SmackDown, the show that happened pretty much after we went off the air last Thursday when we recorded Friday Night SmackDown. The first show in the Thunderdome, Jeff Hardy won the Intercontinental Championship. The first time, and I didn't even know this, and I actually would like to go back and find out more specifics, but this is the first time since 2002 that a WWE Championship changed hands on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday night consecutively. I don't necessarily know how that would have happened in 2002 because there must have been a few house shows in between because there was no NXT, and SmackDown was not on Fridays in 2002. It was still on Thursday nights. So I'm guessing it must have been a house show on Friday night, a house show on Saturday night, and then pay-per-view Sunday and Monday night?
I would assume so. Yeah, I mean, I would assume that would be the case. I mean, we have seen it before where, we were talking a few years back. I think it was Samoa Joe, won a championship, or AJ Styles, if I'm not mistaken, won.
I think they actually. Yeah, I think it might have been both of them at a New York City house show.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Can we really put that aside though? Is a New York City house show really that? To me, it's almost like a non-televised like pay-per-view if you think about it, because they always put on a really good show at the Garden.
And now that I'm thinking about it, in 2002, now I don't necessarily know if what the statistic is that a title changed hands and stayed changed hands, because I remember in around the 2002 time, the Hardcore Championship was changing hands all the time. And at house shows, or even at the European pay-per-views, they would often change hands during the show, but then it would go back to the original title holder at the end of the show. Probably, I bet you, I haven't attended a house show in a long time, and mainly because of the pandemic, but most importantly, any of the house shows that I bet you that have featured the 24/7 belt might have had the same thing where someone won the 24/7 belt at the beginning of the house show, and then the person who, came with the 24/7 belt wins it at the end of the house show. And if that's the case, then I could see how that happened, because I remember the Hardcore Championship was always changing hands. I think I went to a house show in around the 2002, 2003 time where the Hardcore Championship changed hands and someone else won it, and then at the end of the big scramble, it was the original owner of the belt who won it back and left the show, so that those who watch on TV are none the wiser.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I was going to say, that makes sense, because it's one of those titles that was literally, just like the 24/7 title, was literally fought anywhere, anytime, essentially. So this 24/7 belt is like the new version of the old Hardcore belt. But I will say this. I do like the Hardcore belt better. That's just me.
But this case, all the championships that changed hands stayed changed hands, and they all did change hands on television because, as we mentioned at the start of the show, there's a lot of television to talk about. SmackDown was the debut of the Thunderdome. We obviously saw it again on Sunday for SummerSlam and Monday. So I'll get your initial reactions. What do you think of the Thunderdome, Brandon?
I was actually pleasantly surprised. I didn't think it was as terrible as I thought it would be. I mean, obviously it's not the fans being actually in the arena, but I guess it's the next best thing. We're in a pandemic, so from what it was, I thought it was fine. I mean, it was good enough in my book. I'm just one of those people. I just want fans back in the stands. But for now, it was. I think it was a good call by WWE to do it.
See, and it's all, again, my favorite thing to argue about, my favorite thing to talk about. I'll beat it like a dead horse all day long. Thunderdome, no fans in the arena, right? There's still no fans. But you're telling me if WrestleMania would have been in that environment, that it wouldn't have been way different. We obviously saw Drew McIntyre when he came out with the belt, or when he came out on Monday Night Raw with the belt. The panoramic fireworks, similar to what you see at a WrestleMania, where they got the fireworks going around the whole thing. I mean, that right there. I'm not saying that WrestleMania just, and I've said it a million times, it didn't just lack fans. It lacked what the Thunderdome would have essentially provided. If WrestleMania was in the Thunderdome, even without the fan screens, just the screens in general, and just kind of like that more arena size, where they actually come down an entranceway that is more than 5 feet long, and where you had the pyrotechnics and where you have that kind of setup, yeah, I think WrestleMania right there would have been much better with that look to it that we saw in the Thunderdome. Because let's be serious, I mean, I watch Raw and SmackDown normally on a tape delay basis, but this week, I mean, I was watching Raw live. I obviously watched SummerSlam live, and SummerSlam to me felt like a bigger pay-per-view. It didn't feel like Extreme Rules. It felt like kind of a big deal. It felt like I was watching something that felt of the caliber of SummerSlam. It wasn't with the fans, but I felt like that SummerSlam fits into the catalog of SummerSlams much better than WrestleMania fits into the catalog of past WrestleManias. That SummerSlam felt like a big pay-per-view. It felt like a big deal. Obviously, there weren't the traditional fans in attendance, but WWE, what they do best, they make up for what they're lost. I mean, and I think the crazy thing about the Thunderdome is the amount of fans that they actually have in there. You got to give it up for WWE. The bandwidth must be insane inside the Amway Center in Orlando, because you see the NBA, they have a typical average of like 70 or 80 fans in the background on those screens. WWE has about 1,500 to 2,000 people on those screens. I mean, that's for not having fans. I mean, that's a lot of faces. Obviously, if you're on the Thunderdome, you probably don't have much of a shot to really get your 15 minutes of fame, because there are so many seats. Unless you got a good one and you can put up a Fire Velveteen Dream sign or a picture of Chris Benoit. Then you make it there. But I mean, the Thunderdome instantly makes me interested again to watch it as a live product, not just follow it because we always have and to talk about it on the podcast, but it makes me as a fan actually look forward to watching the event.
Speaking of Velveteen Dream, I'm repping Velveteen Dream today, so I am not one of those Fire Velveteen Dream people. If Triple H and WWE did a thorough investigation of it, and they cleared him to go back into the ring, they did what they had to do. So I don't follow that Twitter movement of Fire Velveteen Dream. I think it's a joke. I think a lot of social media stuff is a joke. But I do want to take a step back just a little bit. I was going to bring it up before you beat me to it, but I was going to ask you if you saw the Chris Benoit screen there. That was interesting. I also noticed a few people got black screened because they were repping AEW stuff. So I did see that as well. Overall, I mean, you're right. It was the SummerSlam itself, from the aesthetics, was definitely a bigger pay-per-view. It looked like a better pay-per-view, honestly. And I think it was the best pay-per-view that we've gotten since the pandemic happened. So, kudos to WWE. I have to, also mention I like that Drew McIntyre entrance where it sounds like the two swords coming out, you hear that like shing. That was cool. I think that element's really good. Overall, I'm for what it is, I'm not a huge fan of this whole Thunderdome thing, but for what it is and what we can do with this pandemic we're in for the last, 6 months almost now, you know what? It's the best we're going to get, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely the best we're going to get from WWE for now. We'll start with SummerSlam and go back to NXT on Saturday night. So we'll start with SummerSlam. You said overall you think this was the best pay-per-view since the pandemic. So did you like SummerSlam as a whole, or is that just saying obviously it's the best pay-per-view since the pandemic?
I would say it was. I thought it was a really solid pay-per-view, considering what it was and the matches that they had. I was very surprised. I mean, this whole past weekend was full of surprises with debuts of folks we've never seen in a ring before. So where I'm getting at is Dominic Mysterio. He looked really good. Him and Rollins put on a show. And this showed you that Rollins can, make anybody look really good. Rollins just is that good. But I'm not taking anything away from Dominic. That guy, that young man, he did a hell of a job. He's been training with some great wrestlers. I mean, I was reading that obviously he trains with his father, who's a legend in his own right. He also, I read, he'd been training with Jay Lethal from Ring of Honor fame. So he's gotten a lot of work in with some great people, and you can tell that he's very crisp. I thought he did very well. I thought it was a solid match, and kudos to Rollins as well, because he really, he put on a show as well. So overall, even in defeat, Dominic looked fantastic. I thought the hair versus hair. Well, wait, let me check that again. I know we changed that again. The match with Mandy Rose and Sonya, for whoever loses gets fired. I thought that, for what it was a pretty good match. I was surprised that Sonya. I don't know. I'm still kind of trying to figure out, like, why is Sonya why is she leaving? Is she is she done with WWE? I haven't read anything about it, so I don't know what's going on there. But it was kind of curious to see who's leaving.
Storyline. I'm gonna say it's a storyline. I don't think she's going anywhere.
That's what I'm thinking too, because I haven't read anything in the wrestling world, so to speak, the online experts. I haven't seen anything, so I'm assuming, like you just said, I think it's a storyline. But nonetheless, I thought that was pretty good for what it is. I never thought Mandy Rose was that great in the ring. I think Sonya's gotten better, so I think she's definitely improved since she came up through the ranks years ago. Overall, every match was pretty solid. My other favorite part of the night, besides Dominic doing his thing, was the return of one of my favorites, Roman Reigns. I thought that was the best way to finish the show. It looks like he is going full heel. That's my impression. That's what I got because of how he reacted in the ring, new teeth and all, with the new look. He's I don't know if you noticed that, but those teeth were shining real white, so the veneers look good.
I noticed that immediately, not because I noticed his old teeth. So I told the girlfriend, I said, it looks like he has new teeth. And she says, well, I don't know what his teeth looked like before. And I said, you don't need to know what his teeth looked like before to know what his teeth look like now. When it's something that sticks out, it's not like I'm comparing old Roman Reigns' teeth to new Roman Reigns' teeth. I noticed that when Roman Reigns came out before, I didn't notice his teeth. That's what I'm saying. The fact that I notice his teeth, the fact that it looks like he's wearing a mouth guard, like his lip is all swollen up and huge, just made me notice right then and there that the teeth made him look completely different. So you notice his new teeth, even if you don't know what his old teeth look like. But it looked like he's going full heel, mainly because he not just attacked Bray Wyatt, but he most importantly attacked Braun Strowman, who's a face. So it looks like he's going heel because he's just attacking everybody. That's where I get the impression that he's a heel.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you. I like it. I think it's going to give some more edge in a good way for Roman Reigns. Not to jump too far, into the whole teeth thing. But let's be honest. I mean, I never stared at his teeth that much, obviously. But I didn't think his teeth were that bad to begin with. So I wonder if it's he got that done. Maybe he's going to be doing some more movies. I mean, I know he's already kind of scratched the surface in that. So maybe his agent or maybe somebody told him, hey, you should probably do this. It'll give you a better look in the cinema world. So I don't know. I'm not trying to speculate, but whatever. He still looks great in the ring. That heel turn looks fantastic. I'm excited to see him and the Fiend and also Braun Strowman go at it in that triple threat match. I'm excited for it.
I thought the two championship matches ended very anticlimactically. I feel like the way that they ended, they just ended. I was like, oh, that's it? And it was kind of like both of them that way. At least the main event had more of like the atmosphere of where they pulled the ring up kind of thing. But with the Randy Orton Drew McIntyre match, I literally turn away and they're like, it's over. And, it just ended without that, again, when you have fans in the arena kind of thing, you kind of feel when a finisher is not the finisher, when a finisher is going to be the finisher. And it didn't feel like the climactic end of the match. It felt like they were just calling for the 1, 2, 3, and all of a sudden there it is. The match is over.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I watched it live, I blinked and the match was over. It was like a quick roll-up, if I remember correctly, and that was it. You're right, it was very anticlimactic, but I will say this, it's not always a bad thing to have a finish like that because you don't always have to land your finishing maneuver or make somebody tap in your finishing submission hold. I like the occasional roll up to a quick victory. I think those are okay. I don't think it's a huge deal. I'm not gonna hammer down on it that much. it's not a regular thing. I think it's just good to change things up once in a while. So I don't consider it that bad of a thing.
Between Orton and Drew McIntyre isn't over yet anyway, so they'll have another chance to fight. But one more thing I guess I'll take away from SummerSlam is, and I don't mean to diss on the women, and most of the women are a lot taller, so that's why they get so much more credit. But Mandy Rose, I mean, you couldn't ignore her trying to pick up that table when she was trying to pick up that table and struggling to pick up that table. I think she actually pushed the table over by the ring and tried to, like, prop it up to pick it up. And again, I guess that's a little issue right there. Most of the Charlotte Flairs of the world, the Ronda Rouseys, they're not having that problem. But, with women, you definitely have a lot of shorter women. And Mandy Rose, let's say, hasn't been the most veteran of wrestlers either. You know what I mean? She's not somebody who gets in the ring that often. So seeing her kind of have to pick up that table looked pretty awkward at the time and looked like I was kind of scared for her that she wasn't going to get it because it looked like she took a few attempts to get that table up.
Let me ask you this. I mean, kind of put a bow on the SummerSlam pay-per-view. If you had to put a grade on it, what would you grade it?
I'd probably give it a B+.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good because I don't think I've given any event. I feel like every event in this pandemic has been a C at best. WrestleMania included, a C at best because, even if the matches were okay, WWE is a package. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's why we watch. It's World Wrestling Entertainment. The wrestling and the entertainment, they're both equally part in that WWE. And that's kind of why I watch it. You can watch it for wrestling. I'm not saying you in particular, but anybody. I'm talking to the world. You can watch AEW. You can watch indie wrestling. You can say that indie wrestling in front of 50 people with no pomp and circumstances is better technical wrestling. That's great. You can say, basketball in front of no fans is better basketball. That's your opinion. But the reason I watch pro wrestling, WWE specifically, is because of that. I watch indie wrestling, and a lot of times I find New Japan Wrestling and Ring of Honor, a lot of times I find those matches to be better. The reason I don't just watch those and watch WWE, though, is because I like the mix. I do get more excited. I've gone to WrestleMania weekends where I see some great matches on Saturday night, better matches than I'll see all during WrestleMania. But the reason I still go to WrestleMania is because, I'm going to get not as good wrestling, but I'm going to get much better presentation, and it kind of evens itself out for a better entertainment value. So I think that's why WWE really needs the Thunderdome. Because if WWE is just going to put out its wrestling product, well, let's be real. I mean, WWE is not known for its wrestling product. If you want to go watch some real good 60-minute Iron Man matches, which we're going to see, NXT, I guess you got NXT. But mostly outside the WWE world, you got AEW, you got Ring of Honor, you got these other places. I mean, people don't turn into Monday Night Raw to watch a Kenny Omega versus Okada 60-minute match. They would love to see it, but they're not going to get it because WWE's not giving it to them. WWE will give them, though, The Miz and Dolph Ziggler, and while they are not nearly as good as the Kenny Omegas or the Okadas or the Jay Lethals or any of these people, they're going to have fireworks, and they're going to have maybe a better story to tell. So that's what WWE is, what it's all about. So this Thunderdome brings WWE back to being WWE for the first time, I think, since this pandemic. But we go back to a show the night before. I'm kind of wondering, do you think they stole those X's from WrestleMania 30 set for TakeOver 30? They looked awfully familiar. But either way, I think TakeOver 30, if you wanted a better show when it comes to wrestling, that was your show. That was a great show. And I think you got a lot to say about Pat McAfee's in-ring debut.
You bet your ass I do. I called it. I even said I'm not going to be surprised if he puts on a halfway decent show. And he put on a phenomenal show. For a guy who's been training for literally a few weeks, doing what he did in the ring was absolutely fantastic. And I also want to give kudos to Adam Cole as well. He, to me, is another guy like a Seth Rollins, like an AJ Styles. He can make somebody who's, more really green, so to speak, look really good. But that does not take away from Pat McAfee doing what Pat McAfee does. And he stole the show for me on Saturday night. That was my favorite moment of the whole night and my favorite moment of the whole weekend. Some of the moves, some of the spots he did, I was not expecting him to do a superplex. I was not expecting him to do, he jumps up on the rope first off, and in one jumps to the top rope, gets Cole up and throws him down on a superplex. That was phenomenal. He did like his own version of a swanton into the, out of the ring. I mean, the whole package was great, and he cuts a great promo. He's got this great in-ring, like, psychology about him. he's just so charismatic. I've been a fan of his, not even because of his inkling. He's kind of delved into wrestling a little bit, but because I liked how much of a swag he always had when he was a Pro Bowl punter for the Indianapolis Colts. The guy's a showman. The guy's an All-Pro. I am a huge fan, and I hope that we get to see more Pat McAfee. And to be honest with you, I remember what he said before. If he thinks he's good enough, he'll come back and wrestle again. And I think he put on an A-plus performance. Before I get your thoughts on it, I just want to add one other thing. Kevin Owens gave him a shout out on Twitter. So if you're getting something from a guy who's been in the business as long as Kevin Owens has, that to me tells me that you did a hell of a job. I mean, I've seen it all over Twitter. He did a great job. It was the moment of the wrestling weekend, in my opinion. I absolutely loved it. I got to get your thoughts on it, too.
It kind of goes back to what I was just saying about how WWE is this big presentation. And part of that is, I'm not saying WrestleMania 11 probably wasn't the ticket prices that the WrestleManias that we currently have going. WrestleMania 11 was probably similar to, the average ticket was probably $40-$50 kind of thing to go to WrestleMania 11. But if you remember the main event of WrestleMania 11, because of the circumstances and the pomp and all the pageantry around it, was Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow, an NFL player versus a wrestler. Now, that NFL player was a little more namesake at the time, Lawrence Taylor versus Pat McAfee. He was a bigger deal. But that shows you exactly what I'm talking about with WrestleMania, because Pat McAfee and Adam Cole blew that match right out of the water. If you want a match where you see wrestler versus football player and you see the best of the best, WWE is probably going to tell you WrestleMania, because that's the biggest match that they put on, and that's the one time that they had it main event at WrestleMania. They're probably going to say, oh, that's the match you look forward to, because they're trying to sell you the hype. They're trying to sell you the presentation. But Pat McAfee and Adam Cole, that if you actually want to watch real wrestling and good in-ring skills, I think Pat McAfee definitely blew my expectations out of the water. I had no idea, especially when you talk about Dominic Mysterio training and actually growing up in wrestling. And I'm not no knock on Dominic Mysterio, but Pat McAfee isn't the son of a wrestler. He hasn't grown up idolizing wrestlers into the extent that he's been in the gyms and hanging out with The Rock and Undertaker and training and doing all this stuff. He was just a football player who maybe also likes wrestling like me or you. And he went in there and looked like an absolute pro in his debut. Better than wrestlers do sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, man. For the limited amount of time that he had to prepare for this match, imagine what he could do if he gets some legitimate time, practicing and training with some other guys and gals at the Performance Center. Imagine if he gets more, gets acclimated where he's not as green. Because I'm telling you right now, if that's what we get on 2 weeks' notice of training, imagine what he does if he gets a couple months or even a year to train. The guy, if he wants to, he could be a WWE superstar, and I would believe him 110%. And honestly, of all like NFL football players in the most recent era that have come into WWE, Gronkowski, we didn't really get to see much from him. You got Mojo Rawley. Baron Corbin, but he's also been training for a bit. But in such a short time, not having any in-ring experience, that to me just blew my mind. I was so excited because Pat McAfee he's just an entertainer. And I do want to add one point, though. If you take Lawrence Taylor back at WrestleMania 11 and you put Pat McAfee now, considering social media and things like that, I would give Pat McAfee the edge. Lawrence Taylor was Lawrence Taylor. We know that. But because of the presence Pat McAfee has, he's well known across the entire world, not just the football world. So for me, Pat McAfee is a good get for WWE because he has a huge fan base. He's got a ton of supporters. The brand is doing well.
I'm not going to say out here that he does. Lawrence Taylor in 1995, I felt like was I'm not going to put him up there with like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, but he was definitely one of the top 5 most recognizable players in the National Football League. Pat McAfee, while he does have a bigger social media presence than most and all punters do, he's definitely expanded that. I would probably maybe put him into the same category as, what some of these other guys who've done stuff after wrestling. Let's say the Tiki Barbers of the world, the Jason Sehorns, those kind of guys. I would probably put him in the same kind of popularity post-wrestling as or post-football, like a Tiki Barber. Or also an announcer.
I gotta disagree. I would put him higher than that because he not only does he do ESPN like college football, he does WWE shows. He has his own podcast, which is one of the top podcasts in the world. And as we're recording a podcast right now, we know as a fact, because we do a podcast, how important and how big podcasting is nowadays. So when he has that much of a following, and if you look at his Twitter, he's just everywhere. I'm not knocking Lawrence Taylor by any means, because Lawrence Taylor was arguably one of the greatest linebackers or one of the greatest defensive players of all time. I will not knock that. But I think based on the notoriety of how Pat McAfee is and who he is, because of the age that we're in, I got to give the edge to Pat. That's just me.
I'll say this much of all the, especially at WrestleMania and even SummerSlam. Let me throw SummerSlam in there. All the celebrity appearances in which they actually got in the ring and fought, whether it be Lawrence Taylor or Snooki or Mickey Rourke or any of these people or John from the Daily Show. Pat McAfee definitely hands down the best. Yeah. I want to say celebrity appearance. I might say Mr. T was pretty close. I might put Mr. T second or pretty close to Pat McAfee. I felt he held his own. Obviously, he came back for WrestleMania 2 after WrestleMania 1. But Pat McAfee definitely blew all those other, pretty much the later WrestleMania, all that celebrity involvement, all those guys who got in the ring. He blew the Stephen Amell, he blew all of them out of the water. But I'll ask you this question, and you're the Pat McAfee fan club over here. You're telling me, just saying, if you're wrestling, now you're not hyping up the match because Pat McAfee's going to put on the best match. But if you have a WrestleMania match and you're trying to hype it up, and you got Pat McAfee, and you're trying to see how many eyeballs you can get on the screen, Richard Sherman, maybe Marshawn Lynch, Antonio Brown, you're not taking those guys over Pat McAfee?
Not at all. Not 100% no. Because Pat McAfee just the way his personality, just the way he conducts himself. He's not just a former all-pro punter in the NFL. The guy has a huge personality. He's just so well-versed. He's universally either loved or hated. There's no in-between. And the people that don't like him just don't like him because he's very brash and very cocky. But I think that's what makes Pat McAfee so great, is he's a lovable, cocky guy that just likes to have a good time. And guess what? He called the shot. He put on a great match. Even in defeat, he looked great. And Adam Cole, again, I know we're talking Pat McAfee here, but I have to give kudos to Adam Cole. That was a great match on his part as well. That just shows you how good Adam Cole is, and he's a stud too. I mean, he's one of those guys that I hope when fans get back, I hope he gets the promotion. We've talked about this before, to the main roster, because that man deserves a big pop from the fans, because Adam Cole, baby, is the man. I love that guy too.
We'll skip over the North American title match real quick, even though I'll mention that I did pick Damian Priest to win it, so I'm right there. But the guy you picked to win the NXT Championship indeed did win it, and what a week it has been for Keith Lee. The last time we talked, he was preparing to fight Karrion Kross, and now he's 3 days away from fighting Randy Orton on a WWE main pay-per-view event. But let's talk Karrion Kross. Did you enjoy the Keith Lee Karrion Kross match? And obviously, are you disappointed Karrion Kross is giving up the belt?
Yeah, I thought the match was pretty good. I thought for what it was, I think it was pretty good. I mean, you're not going to get those crazy flips and things that you're going to see in maybe a Ricochet, or in this case, we saw Pat McAfee do earlier in the show. But it was a good grind-out match. Two strong bulls in there just locking horns. It's very unfortunate that our boy, my goodness, Karrion Kross, I was forgetting his name for a second, Karrion Kross is out. That sucks. And here's the thing. He finished the match. He was hurt earlier in the match, and he still finished it. That's just a kudos to his toughness. And obviously Keith Lee, fantastic champion. I'm happy for him. I also am very sad for him as well, because, yes, he got the call up in front of the Thunderdome, but he didn't get the call up in front of the live audience. I think he would have gotten a massive pop. I can't wait until fans get to see him live. He's going to get a massive pop. And speaking of Keith Lee real quick, what the hell are we doing with the entrance music? Leave it the way it was on NXT. Why are we changing it on Raw? It makes no sense to me. But again, going back to Karrion Kross, very unfortunate, and I wish him a speedy recovery. He sounds like he's not going to be out too long. I'm a little upset that they just pulled the belt off him just like that. I hate when that happens. I mean, we've seen it happen multiple times. It's just unfortunate, but I do also think it can build a really good storyline, because he never lost it. He relinquished it. So when he comes back, he's coming back for something he never lost. So I think that's going to make it even better for the mystique and the whole, his whole character, because he has one of the best entrances in the business. There's no argument there. He's got one of the best entrances in the business. He's also has this great presence about him. So for me, I can't wait for him to get back. I don't know what the timetable is. I haven't heard anything, but I just can't wait for him to get back. So we'll have to see what happens. But I got to ask you, I just talked about Keith Lee. Did you notice the entrance, and what are your thoughts on it?
Keith Lee did say on Twitter this past week when it comes to his entrance attire and his entrance music, hold on, wait it out, meaning that maybe all these people saying this stuff has gotten back to WWE, and maybe like the Viking Raiders and stuff like that, we're going to see maybe a change come, because obviously not just you, but a lot of people had stuff to say, and WWE for the most part, when it comes to things that are small like that, I feel like they listen to the fans. So I expect sooner rather than later, I feel like they're going to go back to his original music. Obviously that's
why change it in the first place when people universally loved his entrance. Why would you change it though?
I think just when you get up to the main roster, Vince is Vince, and he's got this vision, and he's got his hand on every button, and he just always wants to change things up, especially when you go from NXT to WWE, because even though NXT is part of WWE, he still kind of looks at that like it is developmental, and when you get over to WWE, he wants, everything to be as polished and as clean, and he wants his hand in everything. He doesn't want your Triple H approved NXT entrance theme from 5 years ago. He wants let's repackage you to be a brand new guy starting today kind of thing.
And here's the thing, I think that's awful, by the way. I think that's ridiculous. I appreciate what Vince has done for the business. Obviously, he's one of the forefathers. He's like I hate to use the phrase the Mount Rushmore, but he's like the godfather of professional wrestling. So I think he needs to take a step back. We've talked about this many times, where he just needs to leave things the way they are, because Triple H doing what he does in NXT, he does a great job. Leave Keith's music alone. That music was fine. I think it'll be changed by next week's show. I have no doubt about it. I got to ask you, though, what are your thoughts on Keith Lee and Randy Orton locking horns? And now, obviously, with Drew McIntyre, getting injured, Keith Lee's like, this match coming up with Randy Orton. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think they're rushing Keith Lee up to the top of the food chain too fast, or you like it?
Not. That's the problem, is they never do this in the past. The people like Aleister Black and a lot of the other guys who get called up, they kind of keep them down, and they don't bring them to that top star when they're red hot, and that's what you got to do with Keith Lee. If you want him to be a big deal and you want him to be this big guy coming over from NXT who just lost his belt and this big new acquisition, you got to put him right in with the main eventers. You can't put him down there and have him flounder with the Morrisons of the world and stuff like that. You got to put him right up there, or you're going to have a Rusev on your hands. You're going to have a Aleister Black on your hands. Good for WWE to put him right in there. And while he was red hot, right off of TakeOver, we're talking TakeOver was Saturday, and now this Sunday he's in a pay-per-view match against Randy Orton. Good for them to do that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think I totally agree with you. I don't like the squashes that they've done over the years. I think that just ruins the character, especially when they're red hot on the NXT circuit. So I agree with you on that. I just like to always – I like to see – just pick up where they left off. Yes, they lost the title down in NXT, but why would you have them face top-tier competition in NXT, being the top dog in NXT, and then you got them working against jobbers? It never made sense to me. Speaking of Aleister Black, I know you mentioned him there just a moment ago. What are your thoughts on this heel turn with Aleister Black? I personally think it's a long overdue change, and I'm happy about it.
Obviously, he's got the match this Sunday against Kevin Owens. We'll see where it goes from Aleister Black here on out. I'm curious to see if they're going to do something more with him. But right now, it's kind of more like a wait and see with Aleister Black, because I got very excited when he got called up. I followed him very closely down in NXT because, I actually attended a few of the takeovers that Aleister Black was a part of. And the fact that, when he got called up, he was one of the guys I was looking forward to the most. He had the coolest entrance, the coolest gimmick, I thought. And then I feel that they kind of wasted it a little bit, especially the fact that he was over on SmackDown, which at the time felt like the PG show, the B show, not the it felt like a weird place for Aleister Black to be, 8 o'clock on SmackDown on the more of the kids show. I like SmackDown, Now, don't get me wrong, I like SmackDown better than Raw mostly over the last couple of years, but I felt like Aleister Black over on SmackDown just felt a little weird. Maybe it was just a blue background and like the big vibrant colors of WWE after seeing him perform in NXT, where it's black barricades, black entrance, black black ring canvas. Seeing him come to WWE, with all these more colorful SmackDown like characters, with the Good Brothers over there and with the Miz and with all these kind of WWE, I guess, kind of big, larger than life characters, and him being more of a felt like a darker character. It didn't really belong. But I would like to see, what they can do with him. I hope they can do something with him, but I'm not excited just yet until I actually see it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Raw is better for him. I think it's because of the redness and the dark. It's more of it's the edgier show, I think, in my opinion. I think it's the edgier program. So I think having Aleister Black on Raw is always a good idea. I always agree with you on that because I'm a big fan of Aleister Black. I followed him closely like you have. I mean, he was great in NXT, and I don't think he's got enough of a run on the main roster. And I hope this is a chance for him to be edgy and be a heel, because I think he can be a really good heel, and I think that's what WWE needs, is another really good heel. So I'm curious to see what happens. Really quick, I just want to give you props on the North American title match. Damian Priest, that was a good pick. I'm excited to see what he does too. There was no bad choice in that match. I thought any one of those competitors in the North American title match, I would have been fine with them leaving with the championship. Deep down, I wanted to see Mr. Dream, win it, because I wanted to see WWE kind of troll the Fire Velveteen Dream haters, but that's okay. Damian Priest is good. I think he's got a good gimmick. I'm excited to see what he does with the title.
So NXT right now is kind of confusing me to the way that it normally went about business. Obviously, when somebody lost their championship, that normally meant they got called up. But we're looking at three guys right now who, I remember, was it a year ago? Am I timeline correctly? Maybe not Adam Cole specifically, but you got Adam Cole, who lost the belt, who that must mean he's getting called up, right? You got Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, who we saw show up on Monday Night Raw, like I said, about a year ago, and that whole thing that brought over Aleister Black, thinking, oh, all right, now these guys are going to be on the main roster. And then obviously Finn Balor, he's fine in this NXT Championship match that's taking place next Tuesday because of the fact that him being down in NXT is the gimmick. But with those three guys, I'm a little confused, the Johnny Garganos, because somebody's going to be the NXT champion again, and that's not normally how this works. Once you're NXT champion once, it's like AAA baseball. You play in AAA, you make it to the majors, you don't go back to AAA. And that's what I feel like we're having here with Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. It's like going from AAA to majors back to AAA. I totally agree with that analogy. But I will say it's a little different because everything that I've ever read about, especially Tommaso Ciampa, I don't want to speak about Gargano and Cole as much because I haven't seen them publicly talk about it. But from what anything I've ever seen, Tommaso Ciampa has told management in WWE that he likes the NXT lifestyle because he doesn't want to be on the road all the time. I think he likes it, likes what he's doing. And he's one of the few guys I've ever seen say, yeah, I don't really want to be called up. So I'd rather stay in NXT. So I'm not surprised by that. I honestly think, though, with Gargano, I think he really wants to get Candice up higher so it's more legitimate when she gets a call up with Johnny. I think they go up as a package, and I don't think WWE's ready to bring Candice LeRae up to the main roster. I think they want to see how this whole Gargano family thing, this whole Pixie thing, this whole Poison Pixie deal, how this whole thing develops before they bring her up. And I think Adam Cole, I think there's also another aspect of it where I don't know why, but I think they want to keep building Undisputed Era up as a whole. And then eventually, when we get fans again, that's my theory, that they're gonna bring them up when fans are there, and almost make it like a new, I don't know, maybe not a DX, but maybe like a Shield, and have them be like the cool crew that maybe takes out Retribution later on. Maybe that's what we're waiting for, because I can't stand this Retribution stuff. But it would be cool to see UE, come in and just attack Retribution, and then we have a little bit of a feud there, and then we're off and running.
My opinion on Retribution right now, I think I share with a few people, and I share not with a few people. And my opinion, though, is that as for everybody who thinks like they're picking people out of Retribution and thinks, I think this is Dominic Dijakovic, I think this is, Chelsea Green, I think this is Dio Madden. Personally, I don't think any of them might even be the people that are going to be the end game for Retribution. The reason I don't think we saw Retribution at SummerSlam was the fact that I don't necessarily know if Vince McMahon has the end game for Retribution yet, and actually who is in Retribution. I feel like these might just be NXT jobbers who are kind of just filling the part until they figure it out. We obviously saw it before with the Adams general manager and how that worked out, or more recently this hacker situation. And I feel that's where we are with Retribution. People are trying to pick out who is in Retribution, but I don't even think Vince knows who's in Retribution yet, in the sense of he's doing it, but I don't think there's really the end results yet in their eyes like people think that there is. That's, again, why I don't think they were part of SummerSlam, because SummerSlam's a pay-per-view. They put that on DVD. People are going to ask questions about that years later. Hey, what happened to this Retribution thing? The fact that they weren't on the pay-per-view at all and only on the TV shows that they can make them disappear if they just don't have a good storyline for them in a couple months or a couple weeks. And that's why I think don't get too excited about who you think they are, because I don't necessarily know WWE knows exactly who they are.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you. I totally agree with your thought on that, because I'm with you. That's why they're not unveiling the mask. They're not making it look like it's anybody that anybody really knows. This whole guessing game thing, there's no point to it, because like you said, and I 100% agree with you, I think this is what they're doing. I don't think they even know who's going to be in it yet. So to guess Dio Madden or Dijakovic, any of these wrestlers, Chelsea Green, I think it's too early to speculate at this point. I think what they're doing is they're going to feel things out, and they're going to figure out, okay, let's put these superstars that need a little bit of a bump. Let's get them up. Who knows? They could bring in non-NXT and bring some WWE, main roster folks into the mix, and they could be the ones that, are like, well, we're not getting a push. We're going to turn on you, WWE, kind of a thing.
So moving to the Sunday Backlash, the pay-per-view just 7 days away. It feels like they made this pay-per-view because they just can't put the belt on Roman Reigns fast enough. What is your opinion of this pay-per-view just being literally 7 days later? It makes me feel like when Hulk Hogan lost the belt at Survivor Series 1991, and Undertaker won the belt, which was unprecedented at the time. Undertaker having the belt, but Hulk Hogan not having the belt. So unprecedented that they created a pay-per-view 8 days later called This Tuesday in Texas, where Hulk Hogan beat The Undertaker and won the belt back, so that all was right in the universe. And that's what I kind of feel like you're doing here. I don't necessarily – there's really no reason for this pay-per-view to be this way. I get it that you want Roman Reigns to be the champion, but, there's been a lot of times we watched the Raw after WrestleMania where somebody debuts, somebody comes out, somebody's back. Finn Balor's here. Roman Reigns is back from injury. Somebody's on Raw the night after WrestleMania, Samoa Joe. You don't make a pay-per-view the following week and give them the belt. They might win the belt at the next pay-per-view. They might literally challenge for the belt like we saw, let's say, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. When Brock Lesnar made his return and when Goldberg made his original debut, they were the nights after WrestleMania. Then Brock Lesnar fought John Cena. Goldberg fought The Rock. That was still, though, at the next pay-per-view a month away. I'm fine with this being a triple threat match. I'm fine with the whole storyline being the way it is. What's the rush? Why can't this just be September 20th or September 15th or whatever the next pay-per-view on the calendar was supposed to be? What's the why we have to have a pay-per-view this weekend?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're rushing it way too fast. And also, why would you give the Fiend the belt if you're just gonna have him drop it within a week? That to me, and it's like they're making Bray Wyatt, aka the Fiend, whatever you want to call him, look crappy once again, which is awful because his character deserves way better. His, the Funhouse has been fantastic. It's one of the few things I enjoy watching on WWE programming at this point. So what the hell's the point? If you're going to put the title on him, oh, Roman's back. Oh, great. All right, you're losing the title again, Bray. That's it. I don't like that.
Threat match is the fact that maybe they can, again, keep Bray Wyatt safe and not have him involved in the finish. Roman Reigns pins Braun Strowman so that Bray Wyatt doesn't look weak. Maybe you got a feud going on continuing without the belt between Bray and Braun, or maybe you have the feud continue between Braun and Bray and Roman Reigns afterwards. But I think that's the whole reason for the triple threat. And I'm not against the triple threat. I'm not against putting the belt on Roman Reigns. We've had people come back the night after a pay-per-view before. You just don't have another pay-per-view a week later. I think the WWE Network gets away with this too is because these aren't regular pay-per-views. I would imagine that a lot of fans would probably be pretty actually pissed off if they paid $49.99 for SummerSlam and they're being told, give us another $39.99 or $49.99 next Sunday night for a pay-per-view. The fact that we're not living in that era no more is WWE kind of gets away with it.
Oh, for sure, 110%. I'll just say this, to your point just a moment ago, this pay-per-view a week later just makes no sense to me. I would say this. Why can't it be a month out? Why don't we build this a little bit? Why don't we just have to throw the belt on Roman? I get the triple threat. I agree with you. I think it's a good way to protect the Fiend, but it's also going to drop. It's going to make Bray look weak or Braun look a little weak. I don't like that. So for me, why don't you build this angle for a month? Even if it's a month, that's fine. You can do stuff in 4 weeks or 5 weeks and then have that pay-per-view be the triple threat match between the three and make it good. Why? To me, I just think it's just being rushed. Give it some time to simmer. Build it up a little bit before you let the whole thing out.
So we know who you're picking this week. We'll finish off the show with this, your thought. Who is leaving next Tuesday night, the 60-minute Iron Man match with the NXT World Championship?
I'm going to go with Johnny Gargano. I think it's time for him to be back, back at the top of the food chain. I think you're going to see the next step of it. You're going to see Candice LeRae getting the title because I think the end game here is the Gargano family, the married Garganos are going to be the champions. So I think Johnny gets the title. I think it's good for his gimmick to be the champion because then he can say, yes, I really am Johnny NXT. I run the place. And then not too long after that, Candice gets inserted and wins the title. So the Garganos are running things. That's where I'm thinking. I'm thinking kind of more of a future plan. That's why I think Gargano gets it this time. And then later on, when Cross comes back, Cross takes the title back from Johnny.
I'm thinking Tommaso Ciampa. He never lost the belt. Give him back the belt, and then you can start his ascend back to, like you said, he wants to stay in NXT, but you can, I guess, start his ascend back to near the top of NXT again. But you pick Gargano, I pick Ciampa. We'll find out next Tuesday. We'll obviously find out everything happens at Payback as well, another pay-per-view this upcoming week. I don't expect it to be a long one. I expect it to be, one of the shorter ones. I like the fact that they started 7 now. Now, they obviously started at 7 before because they were pushing 4.5 hours in ridiculous lengths. But I like the fact that they've shrunken it down to about a 2.5 hour to 2 hour and 15 minute pay-per-view, but still keep the 7 o'clock start. A good touch there. We don't need them at midnight like they were before. But either way, this has been another edition of the Heel the Face podcast for Brandon Clements, myself at K-Rock Jared. We'll talk Payback, we'll talk NXT, and we'll talk anything that happens in between next week on the Heel the Face podcast.